So I wanted to capture some impressions in raw immediacy. So therefore, I don't have uh, the fullest command of the subject matter. So the subject matter is the Stephen B. Smith. I forget Bronze Age Pervert's actual name. It's on. He has an account for his actual name on YouTube. Alamaru, I believe. But in any case, so there's a panel discussion with ghibellini and four, and they're all outstanding. None of them are just saying, making small talk or something, but they all have nice avenues on Strauss, I think. But the first one to respond is the Stephen B. Smith, and that's the one I want to focus on. So yeah, if one would listen to that, it's very short what he says, but it's extremely compact. There's all kinds of objects there, every one of which could be but the magnifying glass too, and either go further into or try to summon the power of the good to burn it, like one can with the magnifying glass burn, cause flame to come up. Okay, so what he's doing is, I think the essence of what he's doing is he's taking the arguably the nucleus of the Natural Right and History book. I think it came out, the first edition, in 1950. Could be wrong, because I'm looking at the edition that's 1974, and it has a foreword in it that seems to be of some interest. And he's taken Natural Right and History, and especially what he takes to be the nucleus of it, and thinking it with this new material that or this new sort of stirrings of the what's already in Strauss of ghibellini, and so maybe I'll mention it now, even though it sort of brings us a little too much into parentheses. But the reason, one of the justifications for the passages he gives on natural right, which link up with Schmidt, is that it's at the center of the book, close to the center of the book. And so Strauss is, that's based on that Strauss has said Plato, whenever there's three terms in Plato, the one in the center is always for Plato the most important, which suggests that that's a very germinal, in a way, if one takes it seriously as a canon of right interpretation of the Politeia or the Republic, because then you couldn't say that the final books, which are the most lofty, were really the core of what Plato's teaching was, as most people have taken it to be, and then regarded Plato as being idealistic. So let's look at let's start with the foreword to the 1974. They call it, funnily, 8th impression instead of 8th edition. Of course, Egg is thinking of the process of printing the book itself, making the impression, the ink. So what I'm getting at is, I don't know if this foreword has been in all the there's been numerous editions. I mean, this is the eighth, but there's been, I don't know how many more there's been since then, and apparently they mentioned that in the talk too, that it's been in constant publication uh, during the whole of its existence, actually. It's never been out of new editions. So the forward makes these remarks. They don't quote the whole thing, but it says, for many years, so the motive for Strauss writing this book is that for many years, responsible government has been neglected. The complete rejection of natural law, there's a lot of ellipses in here. The standard by which government relations were judged. No restriction of law could bind the sovereign state. But so that's let me see, there's more here, totality. But so he says the only books that he thinks are on something like, this is the forward, not by Strauss, but by some publisher. The books on natural law, so they're not natural right, but natural law, but I think the publisher seems to take natural law and natural right to coincide in this forward, so that's interesting. Maybe that can't be accepted for certain technical reasons about how natural law is to be understood. I'm not sure. I think Strauss put some kind of together. He says the books on totalitarianism, meaning probably thinking of Arendt's book especially, is one's in this natural law tradition. My own, if my own gloss would be to say, yeah, Strauss says Cicero had a version of natural law, and it consisted of the following argument, that if it gets out that the Romans are scurrilous and actually, what's the phrase here? I have a nice phrase that Stephen B. Smith has mentioned, this phrase from Strauss's text, absolutely unscrupulous and savage enemy. So if they're it's not exactly the same thing, but say the Romans were to get the reputation of being absolutely unscrupulous and savage, then Cicero's argument is that the very fact of that would mean that certain practices, and he gives a specific example. There's a ship, the ship's on the high seas, there's a storm, there must be ballast or we go under. The choice is between two slaves and an Arabian horse. So I'm not sure the horse was Arabian, it was Persian, it's a Persian horse. But yeah, then Cicero's point is, if you throw the slaves over and it gets too well known that this is what the Romans always do in these cases, this will make the other races, genuses, ill-disposed towards Rome, and that will be bad in itself. So this is the kind of thing Strauss is thinking of then by the natural right tradition, this kind of oratory. So remember, Cicero was a Johnny Cochran type of individual, and even Nixon, when you listen to Nixon talk to Kissinger, he's saying to himself, how can I say that? I don't have time to explain this, I just need a single sentence to express this. Can't go into the fine points. Things like all these considerations of direct contact with the political sphere, which is so rapid, which is such a constant, Bannon shouting, the days of thunder, days of thunder. Yeah, so this is part of what Strauss has in mind by the natural law tradition. It's something in direct contact with um, yeah, the rapid moving of the events of state. Um, so let's look a little bit. And that's just my gloss on how I think, kind of part of how I think of the way Strauss actually, just in a way to infer from his usage in his courses. This is how he was, you see kind of the pattern of how he thought about which authors have really spoken about the genuine natural law tradition, which, according to him, began as it has a kind of um, yeah, a Nietzsche, almost like this Nietzschean hatching out of the first beginning, I think, for Strauss, because Strauss says it doesn't start until the Stoics, and that it's originally flatly oxymoronic, or paradoxical at least, notion that of a nomos, which is the combination of nomos and physis, that of a law which is natural, a nomos which is physis. It starts from this, that this was originally total contradiction, but then by the Stoics it got more sorted out. And then, yeah, I suppose, I don't know if, actually, I really don't know that, and it would be really interesting. Does he mean actually that Cicero is the Stoic who is the one who really first worked it out? That would be worth knowing. I think I took it that he meant some Stoics prior to Cicero, but I don't know. So let's look at what Stephen B. Stephen B. Smith is saying, which in a way partially contradicts it because it poses Aristotle as somebody who's square in the natural right tradition, which I suppose he is in a way for Strauss, because he makes arguments that can fit it. But it's not. But I guess the point for Strauss would be: does Aristotle have the concept? And then Strauss would want to say, no, the concept is only properly available at a certain moment, just as to use Heidegger's way of talking, in a factic way, the newer people in the sub-Saharan region, lower Neolithic region, as in the famous study by Evans Pritchard, they did not have the word time, and they didn't have the concept time, but factically they talked about time. Because, like they said, there was a aardvark over by the water gurgling out of the mud, sniffing about its long nose 3 sleeps ago. So factically they talked about time, but they didn't have the notion of time in a full sense. I think that's the very kind of hoop that's casting out here, distrusting. Factically, this hoop sense of natural right had a moment with the Stoics where it first was really available, even though people were already kind of talking about it. So let's see. He quotes Strauss to say, this business about the absolutely unscrupulous and savage enemies in this Schmittian mode, to say one thing he implies without saying directly. I believe this is correct, that Strauss is definitely not Aristotelian, so this relies on us knowing that Strauss is constantly regarded Aristotle as somehow unbalanced in a way, too much with the angels, and in a way going in the direction of Aquinas, which Strauss, I believe, proscribes in a certain sense, sees as bringing about this sort of antithesis of something in contact with this worldly political rampage. It's out of... I just think I can't help it. Just think that the Pope does use X. He has an X account. And it is speaking in real time to a lot of people. So Um, maybe Strauss isn't. It's a kind of a challenge to Strauss's view in the sense that, like, the church is to some extent able to speak to everyone, but then because we don't really believe in their teaching anymore, we believe more in um, the accelerationism of technology or something, or acceleration of politics, accelerationism of some kind, and technology in connection to that. The Catholics can't really speak to everyone because they believe something different than what people really actually believe. But then, some people begin to be tempted by that view, but does it really get there? And then I think then Strauss's point here is, there has to be a Cicero's speaking, even Bannon's speaking from within the direct reach of the rapid movement of the daily politics. Right before the part, he mentions there's an interesting thing. Let us call, this is from Natural Right and History, let us call an extreme situation a situation in which the very existence or independence of society is at stake. In extreme situations, there may be conflicts between what the self-preservation of society requires and the requirements of commutative and distributive justice. In such situations, and only in such situations, it can be justly said that the public safety is the highest law. So that's interesting, that actually that's the direct starting point of Agamben, of all of Agamben's reflections, is that there's, he reads Kafka, for instance, to say, this is how it is once you throw away that hoop, that grand hoop of the concept of time or the concept of natural right. But in this case, the concept of law. This is how things look. All Kafka's stories, this is how they look when you don't have that. Because usually it's kind of like somebody talks to us and then we can't really just not understand English. If we understand English, we can't just say, I will not attend to thee. We already understood. So this is Kafka is supposed to show what it would be like if we didn't already understand. It gives us some kind of bent glass that bends the world to that form of kind of Olafar Eliasson type of illusion maker, which is built out of the material things, however. But I think there, we get into a contest with something that's totally out of the realm of Strauss. So anyway, that I see my space on the thing is not that good. So, but these are jumping off points, and again, listen to the discussion, the YouTube discussion, and you notice how dense it is with compacted with all kinds of points of departure.